So, what are the latest numbers on gas prices? Today, we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you had a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Just send that question in. I'll get you taken care of. That's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. We are doing the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. It is Friday. Tony Joe's in with me, as he is every Friday, to talk about car-related questions. If you have a question for Tony Joe, works the same way for him as it does for me. Go to the website at prudentmoney.com, send it in, and leave as much detail as possible, and we'll get you taken care of and get that answered. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, Tony Joe, how's it going today?
Well, I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I am doing good. Glad, as always, Friday is here. Been a long week. I know it's been a long week for you as well. And just a lot going on in the news cycles, and especially with gas prices. I want to talk a little bit about this. I always like to ask, what are you seeing in your shop? We'll call it the Tony Joe indicator of that the people are having a tough time. You know, it was interesting. I was having a conversation with Catherine a little while ago. We were talking about the gas prices and people really struggling. And what's just so interesting to me is that it's almost as if the way they report it, or let me say the way they don't report it, you just don't hear all of these problems that people are having. They're having legit problems because of these gas prices, which is something you probably see quite a bit.
I do, yes. It's interesting to me that the people that come into the shop and they have to get their car fixed, and of course they always comment about, gas prices right now and how hard it is to make it. And, I feel bad because there are people out there actually that maybe you and I and a lot of our listeners don't live in that world, which is fortunate. But there's people that have to decide between food and fuel.
Yeah,
and that is
yeah.
a tough call to make. But the only thing my opinion only, Bob, the only thing I can say is the underlying reason for these high prices is worth it to me and my grandkids and their kids and blah, blah, blah. But that's just my opinion, and take that for what it's worth. I know it's only temporary.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the questions that come up. And I was telling you earlier that we talk about these things from time to time, and even though I'm sitting here listening to you talk about this time after time again, I don't always remember. And I thought, the way I look at it, if I don't remember, certainly some of our listeners don't remember, and it's a good to have a little bit of a review. In fact, I was putting gas in Sherry's car, and she goes, "Well, do exactly what Tony Joe said to do, using that low grade of fuel."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't really remember if he said it was the middle one or the lowest one. But anyway, go back over that, because I think that's important for people to know. Hey, and they're probably doing it anyway, but that it is okay, and when it's not, maybe not okay.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was noticing this past week, taking a little survey. Well, actually, I wasn't. My son was, just on his phone. And, Bob, how we talk about, we'll get into the octane rating here in a minute, but the cheaper, less quality fuel places that we talk about sometime?
Mm-hmm.
They're not
Right.
cheaper right now. They're no cheaper. And it's kind of an interesting scenario. I wish people would go out there and look around.
I have not noticed that.
I have, and I thought, that's strange, because some of the places that would normally be 10 cents a gallon cheaper or 7 cents cheaper because their quality of fuel is bought from the wholesale market are no cheaper than the name brand places right now. So I'm going to encourage people, Look around. If it's that way in your area, it is that way in our area right now. So why would you buy cheap, lesser quality fuel when it's going to cost you the same price for a name brand? Now, name brand, I mean the Exxons, the Mobils, the Shells, Texacos, Citcos, all the name brand fuel stations. When you pull up to the pump, I'll just go over this again. When you pull up to the pump, wherever you're getting fuel, most people, generally speaking, only need to push the 87 button. You got three choices. You got 92, 89, and 87. Those are the octane ratings. You probably will only need to use the 87 button. That is 87 octane. It's the cheapest of the three prices that will be displayed on the pump. They all contain up to 10% ethanol. You can't escape that, but use the very cheapest price, or if you can't remember that, it should be easy to remember, hey, the cheapest price won. Now, we don't mean the cheapest price gas station. We need when you pull up to the pump, you've got the three choices. You're going to use the cheapest of the three choices.
Well, if you really think about it, this is a supply and demand issue. And so if I'm one of the cheaper gas retailers, why wouldn't I come up with everybody else? Because you can get away with it.
Greed. Yeah, that's what I say.
Yeah,
Greed.
but you can get away
No,
with it.
whatever the market will bear, of course, and everybody's in business to make
But
a
I
profit.
don't think people think that
No,
way.
but
I haven't been thinking in that way. I haven't been looking. But
No, but you know, the last time we had gas crises and shortages and high prices and stuff, I think was 22, 23. I never really surveyed the lesser quality places, but they're all the same
from
now.
what I remember, it was not all the same. Because that
Was it still different?
jumps out at me, and we've talked about this back in 22, 23.
Well, let's face it. I'm human, so are you. It's more appealing for anybody. It's not a big sin. You see a cheaper price than across the street. Which one do you naturally want to gravitate to?
Right.
Of course you're going to go for the cheap, unless you have a little bit of information on the long-term effects of that and how that really doesn't get you anywhere, doesn't burn as clean, burns quicker. So my point is right now I'm encouraging everybody, survey your area. If the cheap places and the name brand places are all the same price, that's what you're going to pay. You might as well go to the name brand Exxon or Mobil or something,
Well, and also keep in mind the chances that you're taking as you put that cheap gasoline in your car. I mean, it's a long-term thing, and,
Right.
and that's probably at the very bottom of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Give you that. However, at the same point, explain that, how that works.
Well, the long-term effects are overall you have more fuel-related problems. Fuel-related repairs due to the extra stuff, contamination, and junk that you're getting in the really off-brand, no-name brand gasoline, because you really don't know what you're getting, and you will have drivability issues in a lot of cases. Check engine lights can come on, and overall, it just doesn't get you as far on a gallon as good quality fuel will. So you're really not saving what you think you are. You might get it 3 or 4 cents cheaper a gallon, but you're really spending more that way in the long run.
So this is probably way over sensationalizing the situation, but if this continues to go on for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
and you know as well as I do, it could end up dragging on. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
What from a supply standpoint, is there kind of a red line that we're getting to that we could start to see a supply problem? I would say it would not make sense to me if we did, because we're only talking about 20-25% of the global production being stopped on a day-to-day basis. But I got to think at some point it could become a problem.
Not knowing enough about the fuel business on that end of it, I would have to say this. I do know this, that the crude that we refine here in America is what we call sweet, or thin, something about it. We can't refine it. We have to send it overseas to have it refined and then brought back as gasoline. So we can refine the heavy crude, like the stuff from Venezuela, and the the refineries we have are pretty much as it always has been. So are we going to have a shortage at the refinery from incoming product? I don't see it. Not in this country. I don't see it. We don't get much of our fuel through the strait anyway. But the global demand and supply formula is going to affect what we are able to encounter over here, both price-wise and supply-wise. So my opinion, Bob, is that we're not going to have any shortages. And I don't think, and the other thing I wanted to point out that I was thinking about, I don't know if anybody listening has noticed what I've noticed in the past year. Gasoline, you would watch the gas prices, and people would drive way across town to save 4 cents because gasoline was cheaper over here, 4 cents, maybe 5 cents, and over here it was higher. In the past, maybe not year, but at least 6 months, I've noticed when I drive by the fuel stations with the prices, man, it can be 40 cents difference from one day to the next, not 3 or 4 cents anymore. I've seen it go from $3.59 to $3.19 overnight. That's a big percentage drop.
With no rhyme or reason.
And I don't know why. Why would that be, you know?
It kind of bugs you.
Well,
you don't know.
the big swings now make me
Right.
wonder, what is really going on? I don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, that is.
And likewise,
truth.
I've seen it go from $3.19 to $3.99 in one
Right.
day too. So it works both ways.
You know, one of the ways to save gasoline. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, "I play this game to where I say to myself, how far can I go on this one tank of gasoline?" And he was telling me, he said that it actually made me drive more conservative. I thought about things. I planned trips out where I never did before, or always put my foot into the pedal and wasted gas.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm trying to make the gas, and I'm cognizant of that, very intentional, I drive totally different.
Yep, it's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you think about things that you never really, you always took for granted. Okay, now you got to think about it. Conserving fuel, how do I do that? Some people don't know. They don't know how to conserve. But I'll tell you, Bob, one of the biggest things that's easy to do for anybody is plan your day accordingly. Think about your car and where you have to go with it, and how can you hit this place, and maybe after work hit this place on the way home without making individual trips everywhere. That's one of the most compact, economical things you can do, and you can do it very easily by just thinking about it and writing down on a piece of paper, hey, I got to go here, here, and here. Why don't I just hit this place today and then go here after work tonight, and then on my way to work tomorrow? You know, compact or plan to compact all of your travel, and you will go, man, that is so easy to do, and it's so effective. Of course, there's a lot of things on the car that make it effective too, but planning your trips is a big, convenient, economical, gas-saving thing that is very simple for anybody to do.
Or get into a competition with your wife. So Sherry said to me, she said, well, I can go further on a tank of gas than you can. So we actually got into this. Anything will work, right?
Let's take them out on Central and race them.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. If you got a question for me, please go to the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Got a question for Tony Joe, do the same thing. We want to get you taken care of. That's all at the website. If you have a question for Tony Joe, make sure that you leave a ton of detail, because he will need it to answer. You probably will need it to answer your questions. That is all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. One of the things I like to do, and we're kind of doing this today, is catch up on things we had scheduled to talk about, we never got to talk about. One of the things that experience this morning really brought this question to mind is that I know you are, I consider myself a pretty avid weather watcher, haven't always been, but I am now.
Mhm.
And so, if the weather, the meteorologist says, hey, we're looking good this week. No thunderstorms, no big lightning storms or anything. So that's kind of the way it was set up for this week,
Mhm.
except for maybe the weekend and that kind of thing. So get up like I normally do, go to the gym like I normally do, and there's this lightning show, pouring down rain, and I'm like, didn't
Where did this come from?
where did this come from? I think the moral of the story is that just because it said so the day before doesn't mean that that can change at a moment's notice. And you might want to you might want to check it a little bit more, considering it is the dreadful month of May.
Exactly. It's the dreadful tornado season from March through April to the end of May. And that's not always accurate. I mean, it can go either way, a little bit more or less on either end of the spectrum. But the problem with weather forecasting this time of the year is everybody does the very best they can. I'm not going to take that away from them. You do the very best you can, but this time of the year we can have these pop-up storms that don't seem to be able to form, but there's this weird thing called the cap, and I know everybody's heard weather people talking about it. And when they predict the weather, they also predict the winds and the tropical, not the winds a lot, the tropical jet stream, and they try to anticipate the cap. Well, sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes things just happen way up there that nobody could possibly predict, and the cap goes away, and these thunderstorms are allowed to form out of nowhere. And Bob, I just want to mention something that was amazing to watch, not for the people in Valley View, Texas, but a couple of years ago, I was looking at the radar, and there was nothing in the Dallas area at all. Nothing really spectacular. Really not much in the whole state of Texas. But up by the Red River, there was this one little tiny thunderstorm that was going to fizzle out, I was sure. And I said, there's nothing tonight. So, because it makes a difference on where I have to park cars in. If we're going to
Oh
get
yeah,
hail,
sure,
I need to
totally,
get cars
yeah.
in and out. So I have to watch the weather all the time. By the time I drove 30 minutes to my house, we turned on the TV. That storm had turned into more of a storm. And then it became a really big mesocloud. I can't remember the term. But anyway, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it started to go south and east towards the city of Dallas, towards our area. And it turned into a monster. And it produced a tornado in Valley View, Texas, just northwest of us. And it was a miraculous thing to watch that thing grow. What caused it? How did it turn from such a little tiny thing on the map that you thought was just going to fizzle out? It turned into this supercell thunderstorm that produced a tornado and the devastation in Valley View. I mean, the people in Valley View certainly know about it, and they know which one I'm talking about. But to me, that was one of the amazing nights that I saw something I've never seen before. I completely discounted that as hey, that's nothing. And, we didn't get the hail and all that. Thank the Lord for that, because I went home that night thinking, I don't have to do this or that or anything, because we're not going to get that. But it came pretty close. Valley View, too close for comfort. And it was a tragic thing, and I've never seen that happen before, and I'm sure it's happened many, many times, but it is, my point is, like you experienced this morning, this time of the year, stuff can come from out of nowhere. That's why you have to watch the weather and be cognizant of the weather, and even then, you still get caught.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. It's funny because you see the opposite happen as well. This big storm line of storms is heading this way, and then it fizzles
Right,
out.
exactly.
It's a very unpredictable, but
Mhm.
the point is, I'll tell you what gets my attention when you're watching what's going on in the Midwest and
Mhm.
up north, and you see these horrific pictures of the 9 tornadoes that came
Yep.
down, and you're just like, I can't even put my arms around that. I mean, one tornado is enough,
Right.
but to imagine that kind of destruction is,
I know,
and the
and it's
question is, you know better than I do. Has it always been like that, or is that just specific to this year?
it's specific to this year because we're going from a La Nina to an El Nino, and the tropical jet stream is keeping everything north of us this year. Now that doesn't mean we can't have a devastating tornado by any means. Don't discount that, but it's keeping most of the stuff just to our north. So it's kind of going through the Midwest part of the country this year. But that doesn't take us out of Tornado Alley. We're definitely still this is the place that we get most of that, and there's a lot of reasons that I can't get into now. But Texas and north central Texas especially, we're experiencing a lighter level of stuff this year, and I would only thank the Lord for that because next year may not be the same.
Yeah, especially when you see some of that devastation, and
Mhm.
it's not just one thing. It's a and think about the blizzards they've had prior to all this, and
Mhm.
that was pretty late in the season as
Yep.
well.
Yeah, and it was, and it's been it's been an experience, and
Makes you a little bit thankful for being in
that's
Texas.
what I'm saying. Just don't don't pretend to talk about it much. Just pretend, hey, it didn't happen. Just forget it. Look the other way. Go on.
One of the other things, so as I jump around here, I apologize, but we attempted to talk about last week, didn't really get into it, and that is the situation where you've got the major repair.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that happens, and we depend on our cars,
Hmm.
and so it's not if you're going to get it fixed, you got to get it fixed. It comes down to what price are you going to pay, and I don't think that people really realize the value of the local mechanic versus taking it to the dealership. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I will tell you that the value, that's a big word because I like to look at a repair, an automobile repair, as what are you getting for your money? There's value in that. However, I will say that I've had a lot of people bring in estimates from mostly dealerships that I look at the estimate and I look at the parts and I take my calculator and I look at the amount of labor versus the amount of hours and the labor rate. I think people need to pay a special attention now because I don't know what's going on. Bob, I do not get out much. I just control what I do in my shop. But the labor rate on this one particular estimate that I had was $290 per hour,
Mm.
according to the time versus the hours. Now, I'm sure if you called them, they would say that's not true, or they would say, well, our labor rate is $175 an hour, $185. I don't know. But it actually came out. I had to do it 2 or 3 times, and I just couldn't believe it. I just had to do it twice and then again the third time. And based on the numbers I had and the estimate that they brought me, it was $290 an hour. Now that seems just unfair by any standards, but then we have to understand that this is a dealership and a lot of overhead, and they've got to make their lease payments like anybody else. So I don't know. I just think it's worth looking into.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. So there's a lot to unpack with
Hmm.
that. So this is Bob Brooks, and you've been listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website. If you got a question for Tony Joe, do the same because we want to get those questions answered. That's at prudentmoney.com, and send those questions in because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.